This is Canada Reads American Style, featuring two friends who love Canada Reads and Canadian literature. Welcome our host Rebecca from Michigan and Tara from Ontario.
Hi everyone, it is Rebecca, and Tara and I are really excited for this podcast because it's something we look forward to every year, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you want to say what it is?
Oh, Canada Reads season has begun.
Woohoo!
Woo! I feel like I should be like donning a pair of like boxing gloves and like pumping my fists together like, it's time. Fight season.
Exactly. There you go. Fight Club. Yeah. So what we are going to do today, because this is something we've kind of historically done, which is to, now that the long list is out, 15 amazing titles, we are going to predict which 5 will make the short list and be their contenders this year for 2023. Yeah. So we're going to go back and forth, but I'm going to let you start and let us know what is your first title that you think will be on the list.
Okay, I am so pumped for this long list, by the way. Fantastic list. Like, I am so excited. I want to read every book that's on this list. Wow. I've never been this excited for a long list before.
Oh, that's awesome.
I know. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Okay, so what I tried to do, I think initially I was going with, what are my favorite books? Bam, bam, bam. Then I stopped myself and went, no. Let's try and think like, outside the box of my mind and choose what I think might be chosen by others and be a good representation. Logic.
Excellent.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Okay, so after that amble, my first book is Greenwood by Michael Christie. Quick little snippet. It's set in 2038 as the world struggles with environmental collapse known as the Great Withering. It's a generational story of the Greenwood family. So you start in 2038, it moves back, you get their whole story, several characters going quite a couple of hundred years, I think, back in the past. And I just think it's a timely book with the environmental story. Mm-hmm. I think it's very timely for this, for the world at the moment. It's on my mind almost constantly. And the generational family story, I think, will bring people into the environmental message.
Have you read it? I feel like you read it.
Yeah,
that's what I thought. Yeah,
and I loved it. And I think because it was nominated for the Giller a few years ago, so that's how I came across it. And I think I was expecting kind of a dry book and was completely surprised by it. Like I'm like, I love this book. I'm full on into this book. So yeah, I was excited to see it on this list.
Now, my first choice, because I also try to come up with like a strategy of how I pick my books.
You're more strategic than I am.
Yeah. So I decided my number one choice is Ducks by Kate Beaton. And the reason I think it will be on there is it's gotten rave reviews, amazing reviews. But also I thought, how interesting. It's the only graphic novel on here. So I have a feeling there's somebody on the Defenders that really wanted a graphic novel and they really wanted to defend it. So that is why I think, because it's the only one on the list and it has rave reviews. So that is why I'm picking it. Plus, I didn't really know what it was about. I kind of knew it was about the oil sands in, is it Alberta? I think Alberta.
Yeah, Alberta.
And I didn't realize that it's her story. Yeah. And that I think, especially like with the Me Too movement, I think this is something, I just think it's going to be a compelling read. And it's on my list. It's been on my list to read as soon as I heard about it. And I just want to mention that she is married to Morgan Murray, who wrote Dirty Birds.
Yes.
And if you are interested, we interviewed him on episode 59, which was February 1st, 2021. And I loved his book. And he is, the two of them together are hilarious. They're so adorable together because she writes, like she draws pictures of him sometimes on there. I follow them on Facebook and they're just very funny. But anyway, I just have a feeling that's going to be on there. So I
Yeah.
say ducks is my number one choice.
That's my number 2 choice, ducks.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah. And for roughly the same reasons, I'm like, I feel like there's a resurgence in graphic novel, like in people being interested in them. And this one, where it's a graphic memoir, makes it a little different. So you're still getting, because Canada Reads seems to really enjoy nonfiction being thrown into the mix. So it's nonfiction memoir, but through a different medium. And the story as well. I think, again, you've got the environmental part of it with the tar sands, right? The oil sands. And that story of being on the East Coast and having to move away from the East Coast in order to work. It's a big part of Canada's story for a lot of people. So
that's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would love to see this one there as well.
Okay. Well, my number 2 on my list is Greenwood by Michael Christie. So you and I flip-flopped our choices there.
Hilarious.
And I think and I kind of thought you had read it and I remembered that you really liked it. So that's another reason I thought, it's been out for a couple of years.
Yep.
But I've noticed it's getting a lot of play recently. I feel like I'm
Yes.
seeing it a lot more on Instagram. So that's when I thought,
All over Instagram.
yeah. So that's why I kind of picked it, because I feel like it's a really hot title right now.
Yeah.
And for all the reasons you stated, yes, that's why that is my number 2 choice.
Yeah. I was going to say, I should say that was also why I chose it too, is because I've seen it all over Instagram in the last month or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, where did this, what's going on that this book is back?
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually thought it was just being published because it was getting so much play. But then I found, no, it's been out for a couple of years and everything. So, yeah.
So now I wonder, I'm like, whoever the panelist is, here I am. I've already chosen a panelist that's chosen this book. This book may not even be on the short list. But I'm like, has the panelist strategically just thrown its book out there? I'm getting into
Yeah, but what do you mean? Say that again. What do you mean?
Whoever the panelist is who's chosen this book, which may not even be true at all.
Yeah.
Have they strategically thrown this book into the book sphere before Canada Reads even begins?
Oh, so
No.
you think there's a conspiracy
there's a conspiracy.
background. I love it. You read a lot of mysteries. That's a good thing.
Too much, because that's why I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, interesting timing, Canada Reads.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you, though. I think that's a possibility for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's my Looney Tunes side. It's just come out.
There you go. Okay. Now, your next choice.
You're going to be annoyed at me because I'm kind of cheating for my 3rd choice.
Okay.
It's an or. I could not decide.
I have an or as well. That's hilarious. Good. I'm doing my or last, but go ahead. Yeah. Okay.
I was going to do mine last, but I'm throwing it into 3rd place. Okay. So it's fantasy, because there's 2 fantasy books there. And I think that there could be a panelist that would want a fantasy book.
Oh, good point.
Right? So the first one is Blood Scion by Deborah Falaye. And it's a fantasy novel about magic, injustice, power, and revenge, inspired by Yoruba Nigerian mythology, which I think sounds fascinating. And from the description that I read of it, it has a strong female character who unleashes her power, which I think will speak to several generations of women at this point in time who, will want to read that story. My or, so the alternative, and I cannot tell you how happy I was to see this author on the long list. Oh my God, I am so happy. It's All the Seas of the World by Gavriel K, who is one of my favorites. I love this man's writing for about 15 years, easily, maybe 20. But he's a fantasy writer, historical fantasy. And I don't think there's a large readership in the mainstream for historical fantasy. I don't know. It's so you don't see his books talked about a lot, which is a
Yeah.
shame because he is a beautiful writer. And by historical fantasy, I kind of mean he takes like a period in history
Hmm.
and he spins it so that it becomes a fantasy somehow. Like he puts in fantastical um, elements,
Hmm.
and they are amazing books.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, in the description of his writing, I recently saw that someone referred to it as, quote, quarter turn to the fantastic historical fiction, which is exactly what he does.
Oh.
And so this one is a fantasy set in a near Renaissance world, and it is about vengeance, power, and love. And the main plot seems to be that two assassins are sent to alter the balance of power in the world. That's the little snippet I've read of it,
Hmm.
and it was enough for me to think that I also think it's very timely because in the last 6 years, how many of us have thought about? I wish someone would just assassinate so and so. Oh, I hate
Sorry.
putting that out
Sorry.
in the world because I feel like
I shouldn't have
such
laughed.
a horrible person. But we've all like you do. I can't in the last I was gonna say even in the last 8 months, there's easily another person I could pick that you're just like, I just really
Yeah.
can we not end this?
Yeah.
So I think that speaks to a lot of us as well. So yeah, that's my I would love to see either of those books on it. I would love to see the K book on it just because I love him so much.
Yeah.
But I think the Blood Scion might have a bit better of a chance.
Okay, I'm going to commit here and now that I will
Okay.
read all the seas of the world no matter what because I'm not a fantasy reader.
Mhm.
And because you really like him and you think he's sort of underrepresented like on Bookstagram,
Yeah.
I am going to add that one to my list and I will read it this year in 23.
Awesome.
So, yes.
We will discuss it.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%. Yes. Okay, because that will maybe be a great intro for me to, because one of the things I need to do is to expand my horizons and stop being so stuck in my genre that I love and
Mhm.
branch out to the ones I always say like, "Man, I don't really read those." So, yeah,
Yeah.
I commit to doing that.
I think you will love because even though they're fantasy, they're very character driven as well. Like you know his characters by the end of the book. You're
Yeah.
highly invested in them.
Okay. Now you've not read that one yet though, right?
No, but I am
Okay.
staring at it right now. I got it for Christmas. I'll be
Oh,
reading it
no.
soon.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Oh,
No.
see, the timing of that. It's got to be
Timing is perfect.
there you go. It's got to
Yeah.
be meant to be kind of thing. Yeah. So my third choice is Dandelion by Jamie Chow
Mm.
Yun Liu. What I liked about this was it's kind of set, it says it's set in the spring of 1987, growing up in a small British Columbia mining town where there were only a handful of Asian families. And it's interesting, but and maybe because I'm still only, I think this is my fourth or fifth or sixth year of Canada Reads, but I feel like sometimes like Asian voices are not as well represented. And maybe that's just because I've only been at this for a few years and maybe it's been a long tradition and maybe they have been and for some reason they don't stand out. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's kind of why I picked it. And I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but it's about it says when Lily was 11 years old, her mother walked away from the family. And I kind of like that kind of a concept as
Mhm.
well, but I think there's more to that story. There's kind of like a little thing, I guess, on that storyline about her mother and where she is. And so I just thought that kind of sounded interesting and I just wanted that Asian representation. But am I wrong in thinking that there
I don't
hasn't?
think you're wrong actually.
Okay.
Cuz as you say it I'm like, yeah, like yeah, no, I think you're correct actually.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
do know that a few years ago we had the Woo Woo, which was a memoir, which I wasn't a huge fan of, but I was just trying to remember, like, just trying to go back and think about
Yeah.
Asian voices, and I kind of
Um
feel like we haven't
the
really.
only one I can think of too is was it Mark?
Oh,
Oh, the
yeah.
memoir, right? About
Oh,
his
yeah. I love
grandfather?
Forgiven. It was
Yes,
Forgiven. I
that's
loved that book.
me too, and I think
Yeah.
that's the only one that comes to my mind, actually.
Yeah. 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 So, okay. So, that anyway,
Yeah,
that's why I've chosen
yeah,
Dandelion. Yeah.
nope. And book sounds good. I think, wasn't it longlisted for the Giller last year as well?
Oh, was it? Okay. Yeah,
I
you're
think it
better on
was.
the Giller Prize
So
books
which
than
I
I
haven't
am.
read it yet, but it's on my to
Yeah.
be read, and sounds really good too, actually.
Okay.
Yep,
Cool.
good choice.
Your next one.
So my fourth pick is Finding Edward by Sheila Murray. So, a little snippet, a novel about Canada's Black history and the story of a mixed race man given up for adoption in the 1920s. I've seen this book pop up a little bit on Instagram in the last few months to rave reviews whenever I've seen it, like the reader has loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I read the description. I'm like, that sounds really good. And from timing for me, I just finished reading The Sleeping Car Porter and loved it as well. And it's also a snippet of Black history in Canada and North America that's not often told. And I was just like, I think that book also speaks to the moment. Like, we're getting more stories of Black history in Canada
Mm-hmm.
that we haven't gotten. It's really weird, actually, that we kind of seem to think that there's not a lot of Black history in Canada, and I think it's just because those stories haven't been told.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think so. And that was my number 4 choice as well.
Oh, look
Yeah.
at us.
Yeah. We're like, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know if it's because you and I have similar reading tastes to some degree, but yeah,
The
we
short
are.
list will be completely different. We'll be like,
I know you are. Yeah, we'll be like, what? Anyway, but like you say, it's a pretty amazing list. So really,
it is.
obviously, as
Yeah.
always, you can't go wrong. But
No.
yeah,
No.
that's why we have a rationale for why we're picking our titles.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So why did you choose this one? Why did you go with Finding Edward?
The exact same reason. First of
Yeah.
all, I want to read it. It
Me
sounds
too.
really fascinating.
Me too.
Yeah. And I sort of felt that same way because again, when I look at the list, and obviously it doesn't play out this way, although I think last year I think I've had pretty good success. I usually pick like at least 3. I think I kind of have been able to pick like 3 of the titles or whatever. But and of course, if we knew the theme, that would help. And if we knew who the defenders were, that would help. But I get that they don't want to let us know that until we've done this kind of a podcast.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, that's kind of how I felt was
Yeah.
I feel like again, I'm looking for voices that feel a little underrepresented on Canada Reads. And so that's why I picked Finding Edward. So
Yeah.
but I'm definitely gonna read this one. Okay, now your number 5 choice.
Okay, I feel like we will not overlap on this one.
Oh, okay.
Again, you could surprise me and I could be wrong,
Yeah.
but I went with a romance. So I went with Hana Khan Carries On by Uzma Jalaluddin.
Yeah.
Which is a modern Muslim retelling of Pride and Prejudice. So I had read this one last year. I think it was just last year or the year before. It's very recently. I loved it. I love her writing. I am not, I'll put it out there, I'm not a huge romance reader. I only started reading them a few years ago. And actually, her first book was probably the first romance that I started off with.
Mm-hmm.
And I love her writing. I love that it's a romance about a community that we don't often hear about.
Mm-hmm.
And they're lovely books. She tackles difficult issues in that community or for that community and for the world as a whole, but she does it in a romance.
Yeah.
And they're just really nice. They're really pleasant books to read, and they're well written, great characters. And it's just representation of stories in which it's not trauma all the time. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because that was the first podcast you did with us, which was we read Aisha at Last.
That's it. That was her first one. Yes.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed that. And I'm not a romance reader, as most people probably have figured out by now. But I mean, I did like back in the day, I was, but then as I've gotten older, I kind of steered away from them just to take on other things. But that's an interesting choice.
Yeah.
Because let me ask you,
Yes.
knowing the competition,
Yep.
Do you think it could be defended in a way to make it the book that all Canada should read?
I do.
Really?
Because
That's
it's like
interesting. Yeah.
because it's about a community that, so even though it's a romance,
Mhm.
it truly is at the center of it. It's about the main characters. I don't have the book in front of me and I can't remember her name. It's about a community in Toronto. Like it is,
Mhm.
that community is going through a crisis and it is about that community. So her Muslim community, her neighborhood, like her geographical neighborhood.
Mhm.
So it's more than a romance. The
Yeah.
romance is almost like a side story to it. For me, it was more about the community and what's going on in that neighborhood, like a gentrification of the neighborhood. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it could be argued that you want all of Canada should read it.
And interestingly, I'm just looking at the post on, Goodreads, and it says, "Now in development for film with Mindy
Mhm.
Kaling and Amazon Studios." So it's gonna be a
Yes.
movie. So,
Yeah.
wow, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
And Canadian lit, and I love Canadian lit, historically is very dark. We
Mhm.
got a
Yeah.
lot of dark shit happens in Canadian lit.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time for it to not be quite as dark at the end of the
Mm.
book,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's kind of like a couple of years ago when, we were coming out of the pandemic, like, the worst of the pandemic
Mhm.
and that moment of shutdowns and stuff, and we had fantasy on the I can't like, Hench and all those
Yep.
books that were
Yep.
on, and because I
Sealed
think
Hope book.
everybody
Yep.
yeah, everybody just needed a freaking break, right, from
Yeah.
the doom and gloom of it all, and so you might have a good point here because it's not like things are it's not like we don't have challenges, and sometimes that's why we read, we read
Yeah.
to escape.
Yeah. And it's nice to see there be a challenge and the characters succeed. Like the community gets through the challenge and it ends happily. Like, there's a happy ending.
Yeah,
Life will continue and it's not always going to be easy. You don't end with it being all like strawberries and cream kind of thing, but
yeah,
there's hope.
yeah.
We do.
Yeah, we all need it. We all need it.
Yeah.
So the reason I picked these as is because why are they on the list? Because they're older, and I feel like why would you put older
Oh,
titles like that on this
yes.
list? So I
I
feel
know.
like one of the two of them is either gonna be, in my mind, Moon of the Crusted Snow or
Yeah.
Station 11.
Yeah.
I just feel like somebody wants to read it's kind of like last year where we ended up with books that had been out for a while, and
Yeah.
clearly these defenders wanted to share those books for whatever reason, they're very important to
Yeah.
them, and so it's those are the 2, Moon of the Crusted Snow, which I've read, and Station 11, which I've read.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just think so I'm not gonna go on about them because everybody pretty much at this point knows about them, but yeah, so I don't know, I'm not and I kept waffling, I said, "Well, maybe it's gonna be this one, but this one," and that's
Yeah.
why it had to be an or because I just feel like it's one of those 2 will be on that list,
Yeah.
so
I
yeah,
agree. And that's why
yeah,
I went, I'm just ignoring them
yeah.
because
I know, I wanted to
yeah.
ignore them, but
Yeah.
it was hilarious because I kept going back to it, and
Yeah.
finally I said, "You know what? Just pick one," and then I thought, "Well, it's one or the other," but for
Yeah.
that reason, because they've been and the reason I think in my mind, though, I feel like it's more likely going to be Moon of the Crusted Snow because Wob Rice was recently on the Giller
Yeah.
committee, and also he's got a new book coming out, and I feel like
Yes.
again, his that book was so telling in that
Yeah.
moment, like, right when the pandemic hit, that thing
Yeah.
came out and blah, blah, blah.
And it's the sequel
Exactly.
to,
So I
yeah.
feel like he's just getting a lot of attention right now
Yeah.
focused on him. So it's more his book versus hers, but I kind of kept waffling between the 2. So yeah.
That's true. And they're both apocalyptic or
Yeah.
pandemic, coming out of a pandemic book. Like what's at the other end?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. If one of them isn't on, I'll be shocked.
Now I have 2 questions for you that you totally did not know I was going to ask you, but I'm going to ask you
That's
anyway.
okay.
I don't know if you have the whole list in front of you, but I was curious how many of the books on the list of that 15 that you've read already?
Oh, 5.
Okay, which ones have you read?
Okay, let me just go
Yeah,
and
because I
grab
want
my
to know.
list a little, because I did write them down here.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I have read, well, Greenwood by Michael Christie,
Yep.
uh, Hana Khan Carries On by Uzma Jalaluddin.
Yep.
I read Mexican Gothic by Sylvia
Oh,
Moreno Garcia
that's
and
interesting.
loved
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I haven't read that. Yeah.
Moon of the Crusted Snow by Waubgeshig and Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel.
Yeah, I've read those two, and those are the only two I've read on this list. So, Moon of the Crusted Snow and Station 11. So, all right, cool. I wanted to know
Yeah.
that, which ones you read.
Yep.
And I want to talk to you offline about Mexican Gothic, though, because, or we can talk about it now really quickly, but I it's funny. I've seen that book so many places, and then part of me goes like, "Oh, it sounds really good. I want to read it." And then sometimes I go
Yeah.
like, "Eh," and then I pass it. So,
Yeah.
do you highly recommend it? How do you feel about that one?
That's weird. I think I highly recommend it for a certain type of reader. I don't know if
Mhm.
it's for everyone. So she is an amazing writer.
Mhm.
I love that she again sets it in a historical period. I can't remember exactly what year. I want
Yeah.
to say like the 20s,
Mhm.
Mexico. So I love that. But the gothic part, you do get like I've heard it referred to as a little bit of body horror
Okay.
near the end. Like it does get not super gruesome, like they're not going to be limbs flying and all this stuff, but
Yeah.
a little like wonkiness does happen.
Okay. Yeah. That's why I think that must have been why I didn't read it then. So that might have been why. All
Yeah.
right. Now, my second question, because this is a
Okay.
question I would be unable to answer for the most part, but I'm curious.
Okay.
And I just thrown it at you, and I apologize for not
Okay.
giving you a
I
heads
probably
up
can't
about it.
answer it either. Go for it.
I just
Okay.
don't know Canadian celebrities as well. But are
Oh,
there any defenders that you would like to see this year, or any that you feel you have a sense that they're like really popular now, or that they might be on? I was just curious if you have any ideas about defenders.
I have no idea. Yeah, I haven't even thought about it because I find each year the defenders I'm always kind of surprised by.
Okay.
Like let me think.
Well, can I just while you're
Yeah,
thinking, I'm gonna tell you the one that
yeah.
I would like to see, and I have no idea if he reads at all. I don't know. I'm sorry, I just have to say that I do like Justin Bieber. I like him since he got married, and I just think he seems like a
Yeah,
fun, quirky guy. And so I don't know if he reads, but I would just like to see Justin Bieber on it. So that's all.
yeah, yeah. That would be fun to see on. That would be fun. That would be it would be fun to watch actually.
I know because I know that I don't know if it's still true, but I know that like a lot of people hate him too. But I feel like
Yeah.
he's maturing, and he's at a point in his life where, he's kind of calmed down and stuff. And I just
Yeah.
feel he reminds me of my younger brother when he was that age. And that's why I've always just had this thing for him.
Yeah. I feel like as he's gotten older, the hatred is not there as much anymore.
Good. Yeah.
Like it was there when he was a little young guy, which is really quite sad actually.
Yeah, which was
You
cruel,
know,
really.
it really is. But I feel like now that Canada's embraced him a little more, because like you said, he has matured. And even we had Bieber bits, like the Timbits
Oh,
here,
that's
right?
right.
And
That's
those
right.
were a
Yeah.
huge success.
That's
So
funny.
yeah, so I think he'd be fine.
Yeah.
Now I am trying to go through my head of like CBC shows that have been kind of.
Oh, yeah.
There's one that I watched that I really enjoy called Moonshine, which is in its second season or something. Oh, you know who I would love to see actually?
Mhm.
Alan Hocko, who's a Newfoundland um, actor. He
Okay.
does come up in Moonshine, but he was in Republic of Doyle.
Okay. Yeah,
Oh my
I've heard of
gosh,
him.
he's done so much things, so much, and I just can't remember. All I can remember him for is Republic of Doyle at the moment. But I would love to see him on there. Actually,
I just
yeah,
thought of somebody I think that could be on the show this year.
yeah. Let's hear.
Andrew Pham, because his show is,
Yes,
because
Run the Burbs, right?
yeah, Run the Burbs,
Yep,
and I'm
yep,
trying to think from Kim's Convenience who Paul Sun Young Lee.
yep.
I think because he was on, maybe he told Andrew like this is really cool, you'll really like it, blah blah blah. And
Yeah.
so Andrew's really hot right now. So maybe Andrew might be one of
Yes.
our yeah.
Yeah. That's a good
Hmm.
one actually. And then that would be fun because he's um Ali is on his show as
Yeah.
well, right? So there'd be
Oh
some
yeah,
fun
that
banter, I think, back and forth between
yes.
them. So that would be fun too. That's a good one.
Trying to think if there's anybody else.
My God, this is so bad. The only Canadian celebrity that comes in my head right now is Alan Thicke, and he's dead. And I can't get him out of my head.
I'm sorry.
He's blocking everything else. I'm like, I don't know why.
And I'm trying to think of like singers, if there are any singers or fashion people, because we had Christian Allaire and we had Jeannie
Yes.
Becker. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's kind of interesting and I will say that for the most part, I don't know who the people are. I don't recognize them. I've recognized one or two here or there.
Yeah.
But so I'm really excited because to me, that's part of the fun of it is I get to
It
look
is.
up these people. And then, as many of you know, I reach out to them to see if we can chat with them. And we've been really lucky in the past to have a few here and there. And we've just really enjoyed their willingness to chat with us. And yeah, so it's been really fun. So,
yeah. Oh, you know who else would be kind of fun?
Who?
This is, now that you've reminded me of Mark Tewksbury, I'd have like one of our Canadian female hockey players, like Hayley Wickenhauser or Cassie Campbell. I think that would be kind of a fun one too.
Yeah, I like that because there is something about what those athletes bring to the table, for crying out loud. They are competitive.
Yep.
And I know that they take, like they've told us in the past, sometimes the timing of it doesn't work and they might have been waiting for years to be on the show or whatever. So there's no way that we can know.
No.
It's kind of like Dancing with the Stars. You have absolutely no idea who they're going to pick.
Okay, you know what?
What?
I'm going to make a prediction right now. Totally off the wall, and I'm going to be completely wrong.
Okay.
It's like my conspiracy theory for Greenwood.
Yep.
I think that you could see Kia Nurse, who is a young basketball player.
Okay.
She plays in the WNBA, but she is Canadian. She's from Hamilton. And I see her defending Finding Edward by Sheila Murray. And Sheila Murray is a Hamilton writer. There we go. I'm calling it.
I'm putting that in our show notes. And I'm picking Andrew Pham. So I think every year we should at least pick one defender. So Andrew Pham is mine. And I think I'd like to see him. What would I want him to defend? Maybe, you know what? I think he could defend, of my titles.
Yeah.
I think he could defend ducks.
Yeah.
Because, one of the things I love about his show, Run the Burbs, is that they are so inclusive. They just try to encompass everything that's great about Canada and how people just want to be inclusive. So that I'm going to say ducks because it is different. It's a graphic novel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's kind of cool.
And he's very pro-female. Like, I feel like the women on his show, like, I love his wife's character. Oh my gosh. I think that woman is amazing. I love her. So that is, okay. So my prediction is Andrew for ducks. And then what's this woman's name? Her name is
Kia Nurse.
Kia.
I think it's,
Okay. I'll look that up to make sure I have the spelling right. And you're going to say she will read Finding Edward. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. So we're adding a little bit of extra to our prediction season.
A little bit of extra to be wrong about.
Yeah, there you go. Right. Probably so. Anyway, thank you all for joining us. I know that, boy, I'll tell you, as soon as they announce the dates for Canada Reads, we all get really, really hyper and excited. And then, of course, the long list comes out. And then on the 25th of January, we will know who the defenders are and the books to be defended. So, I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Happy reading. Thank you for joining us on our bookish journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing Canada Reads American Style wherever you listen. You can connect with the podcast and Rebecca on Instagram at Canada Reads American Style and with Tara at On a Branch Reads. Until next time, keep reading.